The year was 1971, and I don't remember what month it was, uh, but and I shouldn't even tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This has been nagging at me for a while because someone told me I owed this story to the world, and maybe I do. Not so much because of me, but because of the other people involved. Uh, 1971 summertime, and I was selling cars in Clarion, and like all car salesmen, back at that time, back in the day there, like all car salesmen, I had a really nice car and no money. Uh, that's we worked for demonstrators back then. Anyway, that seemed the way it was. So, the story. Elton John had just had his very first hit record about that time, uh, right in there. And I couldn't tell you what the name of the song was, but I'd gotten done work at the dealership, and I drove down to the ranch where three of the boys was hanging out. My brothers-in-law, Joe and Blaze, and another old boy named Joe from out there in Siegel, out by Siegel. Uh, anyway, two Joes and a Blaze, and they were hanging around there. And this 71, those were hippie days, and these boys was a little bit grubby. They was someplace in the middle of a 3 or 4 day drunk, and they were out of beer. They didn't have anything to drink, and there was no food. There was nothing, and my Rose, she was at work, so I didn't have anything to do, and I'm hanging around here with these guys, and we're just we're trying to figure out what we can do because there's nothing to eat and there's nothing to drink, and we didn't have any money. I might have had a couple of bucks or something, but I mean I didn't have enough to feed everybody and do the things we'd like to do. So I said I had an idea, and I went in on the phone and I called the Holiday Inn over in DuBois, and I told them there at the Holiday Inn that I was road manager with Elton John, and we were on our way from Chicago to New York, and we're running into some issues, and we're going to need to get a room for the night. Could they accommodate us? We're going to need 5 rooms, and the guy said, yeah, we can come up with 5 rooms, and I said, well, we're also going to need a private dining room because, my guys, they can't be out in public or they won't be able to eat. People will be all over them, And they said, okay, no problem. Long story short, I had to call them 2 or 3 times, but we got it all handled. We got the rooms and everything. And so we got over there, jumped in my car, we drove over to DuBois to the Holiday Inn there and went in, and I told the man, I got us all signed in and everything, and I told the man, I said, my briefcase is in the other car, and they are not here yet, and all my stuff is in my briefcase. I don't have but about 20 bucks on me, and I don't have my credit cards or anything. And you got to remember that this was back in the day, back before computers and such, and anyway, we told him that Joe, my brother-in-law Joe, was Elton John, and nobody knew what Elton John looked like. Nobody. Today they'd pull it up on the internet and they'd go, no, that ain't, that person, But Elton John, nobody had heard of him. Everybody had heard this new song came out, but nobody knew what Elton John looked like. So I got these boys. They're barefoot. And and grubby, man. I mean, they've been drunk for a couple, 3 days, those young fellas. And so I told them the stuff would be along, but if we could, we'd like to get something to eat while we're waiting for them. And they said, yeah, and they took us to our private dining room. There was 4 of us, and we had 2 waitresses. And And those pretty little things. And my brother-in-law, Joe, he's got this thing with his big toe and the toe next to it that he can pinch it just like he was doing this right here. I mean, he can really pinch. It hurts, yeah. And this one waitress girl, Joe, was reaching up underneath her dress and pinching her on the thighs and what have you. And she was giggling around and going, "Oh, stop that," and everything. And they would come to get a cocktail order. And I said, "Well, ma'am," I said, "you know that these men aren't 21. And she said, "Oh, that's all right. They're celebrities." And they brought us drinks and steaks and stuff. But, man, I could see that manager. He was pacing the floor. He was very uncomfortable with this whole program. We had 5 room keys, and and we're sitting there having dinner, and he ain't seen a dime yet, you know. And we're looking a little fishy, to be honest with you. It's, you know. Anyway, we had a good time. We yucked it up a good bit and had a real nice dinner and a few drinks and this and that. But I could see the look in that manager's eye, and I knew it was time to go. So I said, "Fellas, we better get to the room, and we're going to need our rest. We got to get going early and everything." And I got the boys up off of the chairs and headed for the door. So we went around like we was going to a room, slipped out that side door, jumped in the car, and got out of there. And I said, "You know, we ain't never going to make it back to Brookville. The law is going to have us someplace between here and Brookville. I know they got APBs out and everything, but I never heard a word about it from any law enforcement agencies, and I never heard anything about it from the Holiday Inn or anybody else. I did hear about it from a few of my in-laws. They thought it was an awful way to corrupt their young folks. They was pretty much past any point that I could corrupt them at that point, to be honest with you. And it was a good time. It was, you know, it's not something I'd do again because I'm old and scared, but, you know, when you're young and dumb, you do stuff, and we did it. And it's probably not the nicest story in the world, but it makes a good prison story. And, you know, boys are all the time taking a trip. Might call them habitual vacationers. So that's it. That's the story. I'm going to hit this click and goodbye button. See ya.